When you retire, you may get a chance to go to football heaven. This is football heaven.
Hey guys, welcome to The Mission. I'm your host, Jameer Howerton. I just want to let you know, Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic tickets are on sale right now. Don't miss out on this year, where we hope to have a huge game where we're going to get a chance to see the Tennessee State Tigers take on the Grambling State Tigers. But joining me here on today's mission is Grambling State football royalty. I am so honored to be joined by the granddaughter of the late, great Eddie Robison, who built the foundation of Grambling State football, Miss Cherie Kirkland. Cherie, welcome to the mission, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Jameer. That's very generous of you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you. Before we dive in and learn about the rich tradition of Grambling State football, because I know you were right there, and off camera we got a chance to connect and talk about the rich history that you learned from your grandfather. Let's talk about the 2020 Grambling State University season. Because I know you're connected to football, how they came along. I know you guys got some seniors coming back, some new talent coming in. Tell us all about the season.
Yeah, so it's been, this spring 2021 season. So the football team is playing right now. So the team has, it was 16 months or so, I believe, before they started playing again in February. And so we've been able to play some games. It's been a challenge for Coach Broderick Fobbs and the staff and especially with the student athletes. But, they have taken this head on. It's difficult to try to do spring training and a season basically at the same time, and then dodge all of the COVID challenges that we're having too. So they've done a really good job, I think, of navigating all of those different challenges and trying to get their mojo back, if you will, after such a long hiatus. And then we're really just looking forward to the fall 2021. We do, as you mentioned, have a lot of talent coming in, and we've got a lot of folks returning. So we're excited about the season.
Now, Cherie, I noticed that amazing picture behind you, and you know who this gentleman is as well. We're here inside the Black College Football Hall of Fame Gallery, where we can't wait for you to come here this summer and get a chance to walk through. But that man means a lot to you. Talk to us and tell us all about the legacy and the life of your grandfather.
Oh, wow. As I was thinking about this before, we came on today, there's so many memories I have with him. And one thing I always say, whenever I'm asked to speak about my grandfather, I cannot do it without speaking about my grandmother, Doris Mott Robinson, because he never, gave a speech or anything without mentioning her as well. And I truly believe, if he had not had her, we may still have known an Eddie Robinson. We would not have known the Eddie Robinson that we know. So I have to give my grandmother props. But, they have such a storied relationship. They met in junior high school and courted, as they say, through high school and college. They went to Leland College in Baker, Louisiana, which is right outside of Baton Rouge. They're both from Baton Rouge. So, it's important to note that a lot of our family are Southernites. So Bayou Classics for us are very, used to be very interesting family reunions. But, my grandparents met early. My grandfather got his job here at Grambling at age 22. So they spent their lives here, giving back to this university. With my mom and my uncle Eddie Jr., who coached alongside him. And again, as I was thinking about all of the memories, I thought through everything we did really centered around Grambling. We didn't take family vacations. Our vacations were wherever Grambling was playing on Saturday. And that was perfectly fine for us because that's what we knew. That's just how we grew up.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to grow up in my grandparents' home. So I was able to experience a lot firsthand. So I count myself very blessed. I didn't think about it at the time. A lot of times when you're experiencing something, sometimes you don't realize how big a deal it is until later. So for me to And my grandmother was big on etiquette. So they taught us how to answer the phone because, important people would be calling or stopping by. But in hindsight, how big a deal is it for me to answer the phone and it's Paul Tank Younger on the other end to talk to my grandfather, or, Doug Williams is stopping by the house, or, Buck Buchanan and his wife, who, we still are in contact with today, Mrs. Georgia Buchanan. I mean, those are big deals. These are, and, I was around them all the time growing up. So it didn't resonate with me that these are, legacies that I'm walking among. And now as an adult, I can certainly appreciate it.
Did you get a chance to see your grandfather grade film, break down, and evaluate players? Were you right there at his hip, sitting down like, Papa, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, no, so we called him Papa.
Okay.
And too is what I thought about is, so we had a formal dining room that was off the kitchen, and bless my grandmother's heart, her dining room furniture, she had this pad that she used to cover her dining room table because there was always a projector on it. So uncle and my grandfather would be, watching film in the other room, just broadcasting it up on the wall, and they would be, analyzing film for the next week. And so, yeah, that was always a thing. Sometimes I would go sit in there and I might ask him questions, but, that was just, again, everything we did centered around it, from, again, the trips on Saturdays to even when I had to schedule my wedding. I mean, we had to schedule that around football season. And then it turned out it fell on the date that they had a black and gold game anyway. So he was late coming home to get dressed. So yes, everything Grambling football, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Were you blessed to ever hear his pregame speech or his victory speeches to his team?
If they were outside of the locker room, or if they were, then yes. So, I mean, it's interesting. I can remember a moment my grandmother said, when she actually heard him in the locker room, I don't know if it was a halftime situation, but she's like, I'm so glad he doesn't talk to us like that at home. So, it could get pretty gritty, but yes, countless speeches. He was such a motivator. And it's interesting to me, it's almost like he was this anomaly, because you think about the kind of leader he was, the visionary he was, and he got his job at 22. So he was coaching young men who were his age, right? So if you think about what he built from that, and I mean, his second season, they went undefeated. So I think about that and I'm like, how do you think about Oprah's, and, there are people who understood what their vision was early, and it seemed like they knew what they were supposed to do. It's almost like it was written for them on paper. And he was those people who wanted to be a football coach and was persistent and had this plan for himself. And he really, he played it out. What were you doing at 22, Jameer?
I was still figuring out how many classes I needed to graduate.
Right,
and I wasn't even thinking about an internship or nothing. I was like, whoa, it's crunch time. And I think I just broke up with a girlfriend. I don't know.
Exactly.
It was like, I remember at 22 years old, my life was flipped up and I was not thinking about motivating and or coaching a football team at Grambling State University. Exactly. So yeah, some people are just anointed at that very tender age.
That's the perfect term.
They carry it on. They carry it on. I would love to dive in and talk about his mission, his values, and the vision of Grambling State football. Because when I look at the top 5 most NFL players, some at HBCU, and this graphic, Grambling comes in at a tight number 2 with 117 players that have gone to the next level, with Tennessee State at 121. So it's like, just a few players. You guys are neck and neck of the talent that you guys have produced that has gone on to that next level. If you could really talk about, your grandfather's mission and the values that he held for his team and his coaches and the vision at that time of Grambling State football.
Well, first and foremost, his goal was to make sure they graduated. So that was first and foremost. It wasn't about just playing football, and it was about character. You know, you had to be someone of great character. He was producing men. You know, he wanted to. He always said, uh, uh, talked about being productive in society, and so those were his primary goals. Of course, if you get to the NFL, we know the percentage of college players that move to the next level is very low. So he understood that, but he also understood those that had the shot to go. He did what it took. I mean, he knew he molded them and mentored them in many different ways. You know, how to speak to press. They had etiquette classes, how to use a knife and fork, because you know you might have to go to a fancy dinner. You know, all of these things, how to dress, how to tie a tie. You know, those are just that are just important to be, you know, present yourself well.
That's right.
And then he always promised his recruits' parents that he would make sure they went to church. So that's how he got a lot of the black moms over, right? So if you're telling me my baby gonna go to church on Sundays too, then yes, you signing with Grambling. And so, you know, he's got a lot of stories about that. And even James Shack Harris will tell you, you know, what his recruiting story was when my grandfather came to his house for him to sign with Grambling. So it was really about being the whole person and not just a football player. It was so much more for him than that. And I think a lot of his players will tell you that he was more of a father figure to them than anything.
That's amazing. You know, when I look at head coach Robison, I also too think of John Thomas at Georgetown University. They just seem like those were, you know, we're gonna convert boys to men because
yes.
it's bigger. It's a bigger mission and bigger goal, right. And building upstanding, rightfully so, citizens, positive citizens.
Right.
I want to talk to you because you attended Grambling State and really just what you learned from attending an HBCU, you know, and living in that whole environment.
Right. So having grown up in a college town, an HBCU college town, you know, it literally and figuratively was home for me. So Grambling had always felt like home, even before I became a student, you know. So I went from, you know, riding my bike through campus just to go to a friend's house to actually being a student there. And, you know, I got to experience everything that that students should at HBCUs. I could walk home from campus, but I lived on campus when I was a student. You know, I was the first one on campus, you know, because you want to be independent and out under your family's watch. So so for me, it was about camaraderie and relationships and the parties and the, you know, that whole atmosphere that comes with HBCUs. But again, I think for me, it's like home and it's like family, because, you know, you can't get away with a whole lot. The professors know your name, you know, they know when you're not there. And so, and then for me, you know, I grew up around all of these people, right? So even more so, you know, it was those extra eyes and the extra guidance that I needed. And I know that a lot of my friends have experienced as well, who weren't from Grambling and may not have even, you know, come from a predominantly Black neighborhood or city. You know, it's like, it feels like just one big hug. That's what it feels like.
Well, let's dive in and let's have some fun and let's talk about a classic, because here in Northeast Ohio, unfortunately last year with the COVID protocols, we didn't have the classic, but the year before then, it came through the Pro Football Hall of Fame like a hurricane. We had a ball, and we're hoping for this year to have a ball. Coach Fobbs, Coach Eddie George, we got a chance to catch up with him. He's excited. New hire. It's the Battle of the Tigers. So for people that may not know the tradition and what it's like to attend a classic, who better to tell us than you?
So it's so much bigger than just the football game. A lot of people say, oh, there's parties, there's pageants, there's Battle of the Bands, and somewhere in between they play football. So and my grandfather understood that. He understood that there could be entertainment wrapped around the game such that it could be revenue generating for the schools and entertaining for families and fans. And so that's where you got a lot of the, the State Fair Classic in Dallas and the Red River Classic that used to be here against Grambling and Alcorn before they moved the games home. Bayou Classic, there's the Magic City Classic, Circle City Classic, the Whitney M. Young Classic in the Meadowlands.
That's the one I used to go to. That's where I got introduced to. So yes, it used to be Grambling against Morgan State, and that was my first introduction of a classic. Now, we didn't have all the weekend how we have here in Canton, and it was probably going on. I just didn't know. But the tailgating, the fun, I was like, man, Dad, I may want to go to a HBCU. Yeah, it was like
all of that.
Oh, I never forget just going and you just to see of people and the vibe and the energy. Like, wow,
it is like nothing else. And so, there's so many. I think the list has died down a little bit, but we need to get back to those kinds of weekend affairs, because that's basically what they are. There's so much surrounding them all now. They folded in career fairs and all of that for students as well. So it's really a great time for HBCU alumni, for people just in general who wouldn't ordinarily experience HBCUs. That's a great way to get it all in a couple of days. But for the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic that we've got coming up Labor Day weekend, the Tennessee State rivalry is an old one for us. And I think I shared this with you when Joe Gilliam was coaching at Tennessee State. He and my grandfather would go head to head periodically, and actually Eddie Robinson Jr. and Craig Gilliam struck a friendship as well. So they had a relationship over the years. And then completely outside of that, Eddie Robinson's grandson, my brother Michael, and Joe Gilliam's granddaughter Stacy met at Howard and eventually married. So
that's amazing.
So much bigger for us than again just the game. We're certainly excited about fielding our team again in the fall, and then it's exciting for Eddie George, who's just been announced at Tennessee State, and this will be his first loss.
I like that. First loss.
First loss, but it's great to be a part of history for him too.
That's right. And that's why that's a great segue, because I want to talk to you about the future of HBCU football. You're seeing Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders. This is his first year of, he's going to complete his first year of being a head coach at Jackson State in Sonic Boom. And now you got football legend, the Ohio State great, Eddie George, who's now stepping into the role of the new head coach. Where do you see the future for HBCU football?
So this has been an interesting time. I don't know if it's going to be a trend, or if somehow, we've seen these two, and I'm cautiously optimistic. And I say that because I feel like they both have great connections that could translate into something really positive for our HBCUs. And I'm going to hold them to that translation. And by that, I mean, this needs to turn into scholarship dollars, larger recruiting budgets, enrichment for our coaches, bigger TV deals, nutrition and wellness centers. Our facilities, if you were really to do the research on them, are so subpar. Our kids deserve so much better. And so for a Coach Deion or Coach George, I would hold them to that. If you're going to come here with the popularity that you bring, then let's translate it to something meaningful for our student athletes. The other side of that for me is thinking about the coaches who have the expertise and the experience, who have been in the trenches, who now are being overlooked for opportunities, maybe because they're not as popular. And I make sure that we're not sending a message that we're devaluing that for the popularity.
That's real.
So that's real.
That's real, because when you look at Florida State, where Deion Sanders played in, the Ohio State where Eddie George played at, and you look at those facilities, I mean, I would go on record to say, like, they're just right there at the level of NFL team facilities.
Sure.
and it's a hard sell when you're telling a young kid like, hey, we want you to come to Grambling State, but then at the same time, Michigan just, is touting him too. And it's like, what do I do? And you're looking at this facility versus that facility. You look at, like you said, the meal program, all that, kind of plays into is like, well, where do you want me to go? So yeah. And then that's a great point. You don't want it to just be a popularity contest. Like, we're just trying to get the name for the fanfare to come. Like, no, we're building, we said earlier, we're building young boys into men. And this is a serious program. Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. That's real.
There's so much more to it than just trying to make sure we get on ESPN. I mean,
Now, with you being a part of the Grambling State University planning committees and just being, boots on the ground, how are things developing? When we look at, let's just be honest, with all the social unrest, that we're seeing. And I know we're talking about Classic and we're having fun, but just to digress for a quick minute, what does that look like now on those campuses? How is those conversations being held with not only student athletes, but just with students in general?
Right. And because it's happening simultaneously with a pandemic, it's that much more difficult because, you can't bring everybody together as you normally would. So universities, I know for Grambling at least, have had to try to really figure out how do we still engage our athletes, our students, period, and really help them navigate. This is a really tough time.
Right.
One positive that came out of us not fielding a team in the fall was Coach Fobbs had time to really sit down and think about what he wanted his program to look like. And so there's a small group of people, an advisory board, if you will, for him, that meets on a regular basis just to kind of, hear him out and figure out who the connections could be, and again, we're talking about recruiting and, how do we, find more money for that. Summer school funding. I mean, people don't think about the fact that, if you don't have, all the kids can't afford to pay for summer school. You don't have all of your team there together, then you don't have a lot of time to build that camaraderie and all of the other physical aspects of it before a season starts. And then you start to affect their academic progress as well. So all of those kinds of topics we talked through with him since probably last summer. I mean, we meet every week with him when everybody's available. And we've made some significant progress. And one of the main things we've done is a speaker series and brought people in virtually to talk to our student athletes about mental health and financial health and how to prepare for their careers as they're moving out of, it's a big shift moving from a place that nurtures you. And, we talk about it being family and home and people are guiding you and holding your hand. And then when you graduate, that's it.
Right.
So we talk to them about all of those things. And so that's been a plus for us having been on hiatus. And so that speaker series is something that we're going to continue at Grambling as well. And, we've done surveys with the student athletes just to get their opinions on what they want to hear about. And it's really very, it's heart-wrenching and heartwarming at the same time to hear really some of the stressors that they have.
Right.
So I think it's important, to really just give them an avenue to open up and talk about what their pain points are from what's happening in the world to what's happening with them at school, what's happening with a lot of them at home. A lot of families are depending on these kids,
right,
to come and help support their families. It's a lot of stress.
Right. Well, throughout that the whole Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic weekend, I mean, starting with September 3rd, there's going to be that college fair, and there's going to be those group talks to have that building and positive solution-driven conversations, along with the step show and all the pageantry. But there will be time to address certain issues with a solution-based, positive commentary, just to give people a chance to kind of, like you said, talk, but yet give solution-based results and a good time.
Exactly.
With Marvin
We can wrap
Sapp.
it all up with a good
We're
time.
gonna wrap it all up. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna have the step show. We're gonna have the battle of the bands. We're gonna have food trucks. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna have a really great time. But I personally want to thank you so much for joining us here on The Mission, Cherie. We can't wait to host you and your family and the Grambling State Tigers family right here at Canton, Ohio. So we want to thank you so much for your time and joining us right here on The Mission.
Looking forward to it.